All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into something I know a lot of you are really interested in, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on the exam from the Management and Strategy Institute.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular certification. A lot of people looking to really level up their process improvement skills, and, this is the one to get.
Exactly. And we've got a ton of requests to go through this, all the resources you guys have sent in
hmm
and give you the kind of the ultimate prep guide for this exam. So think of this as your cram session right before the big test.
That's it. We've got the Green Belt book, PDF, and just a bunch of other materials that you've all shared, and we've boiled it down to what you really need to know to not just pass, but really understand the core concepts.
Yeah, we don't want you to just memorize a bunch of stuff. Right? We want you to really get it, to have those aha moments where it all clicks.
Absolutely. That's what makes it stick, so you can actually go out there and apply it, make a real difference in your work.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Lean Six Sigma. What's the big picture here, especially for someone gearing up for this exam?
So for the exam, you really want to nail down this idea. Lean Six Sigma, it's like a powerful combo. You've got Lean, which is all about maximizing value for the customer, making things super efficient, getting rid of anything that's just waste.
Okay, so efficiency is the key word for lean. Got it.
Right. And then you've got Six Sigma, which is all about reducing variation, improving quality, and making things really consistent. It's a super data-driven approach, really systematic.
Data-driven. All right, so let's dive a little deeper into lean. What are the absolute must-know principles for acing the certification?
Okay, so when it comes to lean principles for the certification, there are five you absolutely need to know. First one, you've got to be able to pinpoint exactly what the customer values, like really understand their needs and expectations.
Makes sense. No point in making something efficient if it's not what the customer wants in the first place.
Right. Second, you've got to eliminate waste. Anything that doesn't add value to the customer's eyes, get rid of it.
So that's where the efficiency part really kicks in, right?
Exactly. Third, you want a smooth flow, everything moving seamlessly through the process. Fourth, it's a pull system. So
Yeah.
you only do work when there's a demand for it, no overproduction.
Okay, so it's all very much demand-driven. Interesting.
And finally, you're always striving for perfection. It's a constant pursuit of improvement, always looking for ways to do things better, faster, and more efficiently.
That's a Kaizen concept, right? Continuous improvement.
Exactly. That's a big part of the lean philosophy.
Got it. Now, you mentioned waste, and I know that's a big part of lean. What are the specific types of waste that green belts need to be able to identify, especially for the exam?
Okay, so lean identifies 8 types of waste, and there's a handy acronym to remember them: downtime.
Downtime. Okay, I like it. Let's break that down.
So D is for defects. That's anything that's not right, that needs rework or gets scrapped. It's a waste of time, materials, and effort. O is for overproduction, making more than you need or making it sooner than you need it.
Yeah, that ties up resources and creates unnecessary inventory.
Exactly. W is for waiting. Anytime something is just sitting around waiting for the next step, that's waste. N is for non-utilized talent, not using the skills and knowledge of your people to their fullest potential.
Right, so it's not just about physical waste, but also wasted potential.
Exactly. T is for transportation, moving things around more than necessary.
Okay, so that's like unnecessary movement of materials.
Right. A is for inventory, having more materials or work in progress than you actually need. It ties up money and space.
Yeah, I've heard that called inventory hiding problems too.
Exactly. M is for motion, unnecessary movement of people, like walking too far to get something.
Makes sense. And finally, E4.
Overprocessing, doing more work than is necessary to meet the customer's needs.
Ah, so it's about working smarter, not harder.
Precisely. And remember, for the exam, you really want to be able to not just list these wastes, but also identify examples of them in different processes.
Okay, so that's lean in a nutshell, eliminating waste and maximizing value. Now, what's the key takeaway for Six Sigma, especially for the Green Belt exam?
The key takeaway for Six Sigma is its structured, data-driven approach to problem solving and improving quality. You really want to understand the DMAIC methodology: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. It's like a roadmap for tackling any process issue, and it relies heavily on data and statistical analysis.
DMAIC. Definitely a must-know for the exam. All right, so we've got Lean for efficiency and Six Sigma for quality. How do these two work together to achieve the overall goals of Lean Six Sigma?
So think of it this way. Lean is like the detective, figuring out where the bottlenecks and waste are in the process. Six Sigma is the scientist, analyzing the data to understand the root causes of those issues and finding ways to eliminate them.
Okay, I like that analogy. So they're complementary, not contradictory.
Exactly. Together, they help you create processes that are both efficient and consistently produce high-quality results. And that's the key to customer satisfaction and a culture of continuous improvement, Kaizen.
All right, that's a great foundation for understanding Lean Six Sigma. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about the green belt role itself. What does a green belt actually do in a Lean Six Sigma environment, and where do they fit into the bigger picture?
Think of green belts as the project leaders for Lean Six Sigma. They're the ones who take the DMAIC methodology and actually apply it to real-world problems. They're not just the thinkers, they're the doers.
So if yellow belts are kind of the beginners and black belts are the experts, where do green belts fall?
Green belts are the crucial link between the two. They have a deeper level of understanding than yellow belts and can lead their own projects, but they might also work on parts of larger, more complex projects led by black belts.
So they're getting a lot of hands-on experience.
Absolutely. They're in the trenches, collecting data, analyzing it, coming up with solutions, implementing them. It's a really well-rounded role.
Okay, so for someone studying for the exam, what are the core responsibilities of a green belt that they should be ready to explain?
All right, so for the certification, you really want to focus on these core responsibilities. First off, leading projects through the entire DMAIC cycle. That means defining the problem, measuring the current state, analyzing the root causes, coming up with improvements, and putting controls in place to make sure the changes stick.
So they're basically like mini project managers.
In a way, yes, they're developing plans, managing timelines, keeping the project on track.
What else?
Another big one is data collection and analysis. Green belts need to be comfortable with collecting data, using statistical tools to analyze it, and identifying patterns and trends.
Okay, so strong analytical skills are essential.
Absolutely. They also have to be good communicators and team facilitators. They're working with people from different departments, getting everyone on the same page, and keeping the project moving forward.
So there's a big leadership component to this role as well.
Definitely. They're leading the charge for improvement, and that takes strong leadership skills.
Okay, so for someone who might be on the fence about getting certified, what's the real benefit of becoming a Lean Six Sigma green belt, especially in terms of career advancement?
Look, getting that green belt certification, it's like a stamp of approval. It shows employers that you've got a solid understanding of Lean Six Sigma principles and you know how to apply them. And, it really does open doors. It shows you're serious about process improvement, you're a problem solver, and you can lead projects.
Yeah, I imagine it looks really good on a resume.
It definitely does. Plus, the skills you gain are applicable across so many industries, so it can really boost your career prospects in a variety of fields.
Now, you mentioned yellow belts earlier. For someone who already has their yellow belt, how does the green belt certification build upon that foundation? What's the next level of knowledge and responsibility they're gaining?
Right, so if yellow belt is like the intro course, green belt is where you really dive deep. You're moving from a basic awareness of the concepts to actually applying them. You get into the nitty-gritty of statistical analysis, project management, and change leadership.
So you're not just understanding the ideas, you're putting them into practice.
Exactly. And the level of responsibility increases significantly. Yellow belts are often involved in supporting projects, but green belts are leading them.
Okay, so it's a big step up in terms of both knowledge and practical experience.
Absolutely. It's like going from assisting the chef to running your own kitchen.
I like that. So what specific areas of knowledge does a green belt gain that go beyond what's covered in yellow belt training? I'm thinking about things that are especially relevant for the certification exam.
Okay, for the exam, there are a few key areas to focus on. One is statistical process control, or SPC. This is all about monitoring processes over time, making sure they stay in control, and catching any issues before they become big problems.
So it's about maintaining the improvements you've made, right?
Yeah, exactly. Another area is advanced lean tools like value stream mapping. This is a really powerful tool for visualizing the entire process from start to finish and identifying areas where you can eliminate waste and improve flow.
So it's about taking that big picture view.
Right. And then there's Kanban, which is a visual system for managing workflow and making sure you're not overloading the system. And of course, green belts also develop their leadership, communication, and team management skills much further. These are essential for leading projects effectively.
Got it. So it's a much more in-depth and hands-on level of knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, let's dive into the DMAIC framework, which we know is at the heart of Six Sigma. What does a green belt need to know about each of these phases to be well prepared for the certification exam?
All right, so the DMAIC framework, it's like the bread and butter of a Six Sigma green belt. You really need to understand each phase inside and out. So let's start with define.
Okay, define. What are the key things a green belt needs to do in this phase, particularly in the context of the certification?
In the define phase, you're really setting the stage for the entire project. You're clearly identifying the problem you're trying to solve, defining the scope of the project, setting smart roles, and identifying all the key stakeholders. You're also figuring out what the customer really needs and expects, gathering their voice.
So it's all about getting that crystal clear understanding of what you're tackling.
Right, exactly. And for the exam, you need to know how to develop a comprehensive project charter. That's the document that formally lays out the project's purpose, goals, and boundaries.
Okay, the project charter. Got it. What about the measure phase? What are the key areas of focus there for a green belt getting ready for the exam?
In the measure phase, you're all about data. You're figuring out how to measure the current state of the process, collecting baseline data, and understanding how the process is actually performing.
So this is where those analytical skills really come into play.
Absolutely. You'll need to know how to design data collection plans, ensure your data is accurate and reliable, and use statistical tools to analyze it. You'll also be using process mapping techniques like value stream mapping to get a visual representation of the process and pinpoint areas of waste.
Okay, lots of data analysis in this phase. And then what about the analyze phase? What are the key things a green belt should be able to do in this phase for the certification?
The analyze phase is all about getting to the root causes of the problem you've identified. You're digging deep, using data analysis tools and techniques like root cause analysis to figure out why things are happening the way they are.
So it's not enough to just identify the problem, you have to understand the underlying causes.
Right. And for the exam, you'll need to know how to use different root cause analysis techniques like the 5 whys and cause and effect diagrams. You'll also be using statistical tools to test hypotheses and see if your assumptions are correct.
Sounds pretty intensive. Okay, so we've defined the problem, measured the current state, and analyzed the root causes. Now we get to the improve phase, where we actually start developing solutions. What should green belts focus on here for the exam?
In the improve phase, you're putting on your creative hat and coming up with solutions to address the root causes you identified in the analyze phase. It's all about brainstorming, evaluating different options, and selecting the best solutions to test and implement.
Okay, so this is where the innovation comes in.
Exactly. And for the certification, you should be familiar with decision-making tools like the Pew Matrix, which can help you compare different solutions objectively. You'll also need to understand how to conduct pilot tests to evaluate the effectiveness of your solutions before implementing them on a larger scale.
Makes sense. You don't want to roll out a solution without testing it first. And finally, we have the control phase. What's the green belt's role here in ensuring that the hard-won improvements are maintained?
The control phase is all about making sure the improvements you've implemented actually stick. You don't want to go through all that effort just to have things revert back to the old way. So in this phase, you're developing control plans, documenting procedures, providing training, and setting up monitoring systems to ensure the process stays on track.
Okay, so it's about putting those long-term measures in place.
Exactly. And for the exam, you really want to understand how to develop those control plans, how to use control charts to monitor the process, and how to create response plans in case the process does go out of control.
Got it. Now, you mentioned toll gates earlier in the context of the DMAIC framework. Can you explain what those are and why they're important for someone pursuing their green belt certification?
Yeah, so toll gates, think of them like checkpoints at the end of each DMAIC phase. It's where the project team presents their findings to the project sponsor or other key stakeholders.
Okay, so it's like a formal review process.
Right. It's a chance to get feedback, make sure everyone's on the same page, and ensure that the project is meeting its objectives. For the certification, you should understand the purpose of each toll gate and what typically happens at each review point.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got a good grasp of the individual components of Lean and Six Sigma and how they work within the DMAIC framework. Now, let's talk about how they actually come together in practice. How does a green belt integrate the efficiency focus of Lean and the quality focus of Six Sigma?
So in the real world, Lean and Six Sigma work best when they're integrated. It's not about choosing one over the other, but rather using them together to achieve the best results. You might start with a Lean tool, like value stream mapping, to identify areas of waste and bottlenecks, and then use Six Sigma tools to dive deeper into those areas, analyze the data, and develop targeted solutions.
So it's about using the right tool for the right job.
Exactly. And the goal is always the same: to create processes that are both efficient and deliver consistent, high-quality results.
Okay, can you give us a concrete example of how a green belt might integrate Lean and Six Sigma in a real-world project, something that might be relevant to the certification exam?
Sure. Let's say you're a green belt working in a hospital, and you're tasked with improving patient wait times in the emergency room. You could start by using value stream mapping to visually map out the entire patient journey, from the moment they arrive to the moment they're discharged.
Okay, so you're getting that big picture view of the process.
Right. And as you're mapping it out, you're looking for those areas of waste waiting times, unnecessary steps, things that are slowing down the process. Then you can use Six Sigma tools like data analysis and root cause analysis to understand why those bottlenecks are happening. Maybe there's too much variation in the triage process, or maybe there are communication issues between departments.
So you're identifying the specific problems that are causing those delays.
Exactly. And once you understand the root causes, you can develop targeted solutions using both Lean and Six Sigma principles. Maybe you streamline the triage process, implement a new communication system, or adjust staffing levels. The key is to use the right tools and techniques from both methodologies to address the specific issues you've identified.
Okay, that's a great example. Now, are there any potential challenges a green belt might face when trying to integrate Lean and Six Sigma in a project, and how might they overcome those challenges? I'm thinking this might come up in the certification exam.
Yeah, there can definitely be challenges. One common one is resistance to change. People get comfortable with the way things are, and they might not be enthusiastic about implementing new processes.
That's understandable. Change can be hard.
It definitely can be. And another challenge can be a lack of understanding about how Lean and Six Sigma work together. Some people might see them as separate, even competing methodologies, so effective communication is key. A green belt needs to be able to clearly explain the benefits of an integrated approach and get everyone on board with the idea that Lean and Six Sigma can complement each other.
So it's about building that shared understanding and buy-in.
Exactly. And it also helps to involve people in the process, get their input, and make sure they feel like they're part of the solution.
Good point. Now, we've talked a lot about the importance of data in Lean Six Sigma. How critical is data-driven decision-making for a green belt, especially when it comes to the certification exam?
Data-driven decision-making is absolutely essential for a green belt. It's what separates Lean Six Sigma from just making guesses or relying on intuition. You have to be able to collect data, analyze it, and use it to inform your decisions.
Okay, so it's not just about having data, it's about using it effectively.
Exactly. And for the certification, you need to be able to demonstrate that you understand how to collect data, analyze it using statistical tools, and interpret the results.
So what are the specific advantages a green belt gains by using a data-driven approach in their projects? And why is that something they should be prepared to discuss in the certification process?
Well, first off, data helps you identify the real problems. You're not just relying on gut feelings or assumptions, you're looking at the numbers and seeing where the real issues are.
So it takes the guesswork out of it.
Right. And it also helps you develop more effective solutions. When you understand the root causes of a problem, you can come up with targeted solutions that are more likely to be successful. Plus, data gives you credibility. When you can back up your recommendations with data, it's much easier to get buy-in from stakeholders.
That makes sense. So it's about being more objective, more effective, and more persuasive.
Exactly. And that's what Lean Six Sigma is all about.
Okay, so how can a green belt effectively implement data-driven decision-making in their projects? What are some practical steps or tools they should be familiar with, especially for the certification?
First, you need a solid data collection plan. You have to figure out what data you need, how you're going to collect it, and who's responsible for collecting it.
So it starts with a plan.
Always. Then you need to analyze that data using statistical tools. The Greenbelt curriculum covers some basic statistical concepts and tools, and you should be comfortable using them to analyze data and draw conclusions.
Okay, so having some basic statistical knowledge is a must.
Definitely. And then you have to be able to communicate your findings clearly to others, explaining what the data means and how it supports your recommendations. Data visualization tools can be really helpful here.
So it's not just about crunching the numbers, it's about making those numbers meaningful to others.
Exactly. Data-driven decision-making is a team sport.
Okay, let's move on to another important aspect of a Greenbelt's role, selecting the right projects to work on. How do they determine which projects are worth pursuing, especially within the context of Lean Six Sigma and the certification exam?
Project selection is really important for a green belt. You want to choose projects that are going to have a significant impact on the organization's strategic goals, not just small, localized improvements. You also want to consider the feasibility of the project, making sure it's something you can realistically accomplish with the resources and time available.
So it's about being strategic and practical.
Right. And for the exam, you should be able to explain how to identify high-impact projects that are aligned with the organization's priorities and have a good chance of success.
Okay, so where do those high-impact projects typically come from? What are some common sources of project ideas for a Greenbelt?
One of the best sources is the voice of the customer. Understanding what your customers need and expect can reveal a lot of opportunities for improvement.
So it's about listening to what the customers are saying, right?
Absolutely. You can also look at existing process performance data. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the defects occurring? Where are costs high? These are all potential areas for improvement projects.
Makes sense. So you're looking for those pain points in the process.
Exactly. And you can also benchmark against other organizations or industry best practices to see where you stand and identify areas where you can improve.
So it's about constantly looking for ways to do things better.
That's the heart of continuous improvement.
Once a potential project has been identified, what are the crucial steps a Greenbelt needs to take to define it properly, especially in the context of the certification?
So once you've got a project idea, you need to develop a detailed project charter. This is a formal document that outlines the project's purpose, goals, scope, team members, and resources. It's basically a roadmap for the project.
Okay, so it's like the project's constitution.
Exactly. And for the certification, you need to understand how to create a comprehensive project charter that includes all the essential elements.
What makes a project charter effective? What are some key things a Greenbelt should keep in mind when creating one for a certification scenario?
A good project charter needs to be clear, concise, and well-defined. It should state the problem or opportunity being addressed in a way that everyone understands. The goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, the SMART criteria.
Okay, so no vague goals.
Right. The scope needs to be clearly defined to avoid scope creep, and the team members and resources need to be identified and allocated. And, very importantly, the project sponsor needs to formally approve the charter.
So it's not just a document you create and file away.
No, it's a living document that guides the project and keeps everyone aligned.
Okay, we've talked a lot about processes and data, but we haven't talked much about the people involved. How does a Greenbelt analyze and effectively engage with stakeholders, and why is this important for the certification?
Stakeholder engagement is crucial for any project, especially in Lean Six Sigma. You need to identify all the people who have a stake in the project, those who will be affected by the changes you make, and understand their interests and concerns.
So it's about bringing everyone along on the journey.
Right. And for the certification, you should be able to explain how to conduct a stakeholder analysis and develop engagement strategies. This involves communicating clearly, listening to concerns, addressing resistance, and involving stakeholders in the decision-making process.
So it's about building relationships and creating buy-in.
Absolutely. Effective stakeholder engagement can make or break a project.
Okay, back to data analysis for a moment. What are some basic statistical concepts that are absolutely essential for a Lean Six Sigma Greenbelt to understand, particularly for the certification exam?
One of the most important concepts is the normal distribution, also known as the bell curve. This is a statistical distribution that describes many natural phenomena, and it's a key concept in Six Sigma.
Okay, the bell curve. I remember that from stats class.
Right. For the exam, you need to understand the properties of the normal distribution, how to interpret it, and how it's used in Six Sigma tools like control charts and capability analysis.
Why is the normal distribution so important in Six Sigma? What makes it relevant for a Greenbelt?
The normal distribution is important because it helps us understand variation, which is a key concept in Six Sigma. Variation is simply the difference between things, and it exists everywhere. In a process, some variation is natural and expected, but too much variation can lead to defects and inefficiencies.
So it's about understanding what's normal and what's not.
Exactly. And the normal distribution provides a framework for analyzing variation and making data-driven decisions about how to improve a process.
Okay, normal distribution, got it. Now, what about the advanced aspects of data collection and measurement that a Greenbelt needs to be familiar with for the certification?
So when you're collecting data for a Lean Six Sigma project, you need to make sure that data is accurate and reliable. That's where measurement system analysis, MSA, comes in. This involves evaluating the tools and methods you're using to collect data to ensure they're actually measuring what you think they're measuring.
So it's about verifying the accuracy of your data.
Right. And for the exam, you should be able to explain the key concepts of MSA, like bias, repeatability, and reproducibility, and how to conduct a basic gauge R&R study.
Okay, so it's about being really meticulous with your data collection.
Exactly. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Makes sense. Now, what about sampling? Since you can't always measure every single item or process, what should a green belt know about sampling strategies and techniques for the certification?
Sampling is a really important concept in data collection, especially when you're dealing with large populations. You can't always measure everything, so you need to select a representative sample to analyze.
Okay, so it's about choosing the right subset of data to look at.
Right. And for the exam, you should be familiar with different sampling strategies like random sampling, stratified sampling, and systematic sampling, and understand how to choose the right strategy for your specific situation.
So it's about being smart about how you collect your data.
Exactly. And you also need to understand how to determine the appropriate sample size to ensure your results are statistically valid.
Okay, lots to think about with data collection. We've collected the data and ensured its quality. Now let's talk about the tools a Greenbelt uses to analyze that data and uncover insights. What are some of the key analytical tools they need to be proficient in for the certification exam?
One of the most important tools is process mapping. This involves visually representing the steps in a process to better understand how it works and identify areas for improvement.
Okay, so it's about creating a visual roadmap of the process.
Exactly. And for the certification, you should be familiar with different types of process maps, like value stream maps, swim lane diagrams, and SIPOC diagrams. Each type of map has its own purpose and provides different insights into the process.
Okay, so process mapping is a big one. What else?
Another important tool is statistical analysis software. Green belts use software like Minitab or JMP to analyze data, create charts, and run statistical tests.
So having some familiarity with these software programs is important for the exam.
It definitely helps. You don't need to be an expert programmer, but you should understand the basic functionalities of these programs and how they're used in Lean Six Sigma.
Makes sense. What about multivariate analysis and hypothesis testing? Are those concepts relevant for the Greenbelt certification?
Yes, definitely. Multivariate analysis is a technique for analyzing data from multiple sources to understand how different factors interact and contribute to variation. It's a powerful tool for identifying the root causes of problems.
So it's about looking at the bigger picture, not just individual factors in isolation.
Right. And hypothesis testing is a statistical method for testing assumptions about a process. It's used to determine whether observed differences in data are statistically significant or just due to random chance.
Okay, so it's about using data to validate your assumptions.
Exactly. Both multivariate analysis and hypothesis testing are important tools for greenbelts to have in their arsenal.
All right, so we've talked about identifying problems, analyzing data, and developing solutions. Now let's talk about getting to the root cause of issues and eliminating waste, which are key objectives in Lean Six Sigma. What are some essential tools and techniques a Greenbelt needs to know for the certification?
One of the most fundamental tools is cause and effect analysis, often done using a fishbone or Ishikawa diagram. This is a visual brainstorming tool that helps you identify all the potential causes of a problem.
Okay, so it's about brainstorming all the possible reasons why something might be happening.
Exactly. And you typically categorize those causes using the six methods: machines, materials, man, measurement, and environment.
Okay, the 6 MIMS. Got it. What else?
Another important tool is FMEA, or failure modes and effects analysis. This is a proactive approach to identifying potential failures in a process or product before they occur.
So it's about anticipating problems before they happen.
Right, and it involves analyzing the potential consequences of those failures and developing strategies to prevent them or mitigate their impact.
Sounds like a valuable tool for any Greenbelt.
It definitely is. And of course, you also need to be able to recognize and address the 8 wastes, which we discussed earlier.
Right, downtime, Those wastes can really sneak up on you.
They can. A good greenbelt has a keen eye for waste and is always looking for ways to eliminate it.
Okay, so we've analyzed the problems and identified the root causes. Now it's time to generate and select solutions. How does a greenbelt approach this crucial step, especially when preparing for the certification?
Generating solutions often starts with brainstorming. You want to get as many ideas on the table as possible, even if they seem a little crazy at first.
So it's about thinking outside the box.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of different brainstorming techniques you can use, like mind mapping, Scamper, or even just free-flowing discussion. The important thing is to create a safe and open environment where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas.
Okay, so it's about fostering creativity.
Right. And once you've got a bunch of ideas, you need to evaluate them and choose the best ones to implement. Cost-benefit analysis is a useful tool here. It helps you compare the costs and benefits of different solutions to make an informed decision.
So you're looking for the solutions that will provide the biggest bang for your buck.
Exactly. And there are other decision-making tools that can be helpful too, like the decision matrix or multi-voting.
Okay, lots of tools to help with decision-making. Now, once you've selected a solution, how do you actually implement it effectively? And what are some considerations a green belt should be aware of for the certification?
Implementing change can be challenging. People are often resistant to change, especially if they don't understand the reasons behind it.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that at some point.
For sure. So change management is really important. You need to communicate clearly with everyone involved, explain why the change is necessary, and get their buy-in. You also need to provide training and support to help people adapt to the new way of doing things.